Hello, today is Monday, November 17th, 2025, and today I'm going to be reading from Richard Rohr's Daily Meditations, and Richard Rohr is a Catholic priest that I often, when I read his material, often wonder how he hasn't been excommunicated from the Catholic Church yet. But I find a lot of his writings and the writings of his Center for Action and Contemplation thought provoking. And I think this is an indication that we can find thought provoking, deeply philosophical writings, even amongst writings from specific faith traditions, and look past the faith tradition itself for indications of human life and what we mean to each other and to the world and to ourselves. Excuse me. So the devotion today is entitled Not as Rational as We Think, and it's written primarily by Brian McLaren, who is a faculty member at the Center for Action and Contemplation. The meditation, opens with a quote from Brian McLaren's book, Learning How to See. We may live in the same country, the same city, or even under the same roof, but we live in different realities. And then the editors write, CAC faculty member Brian McLaren is concerned about the cost of our increasingly limited ability to see beyond our religious or political points of view. And then Brian writes, over the last decade, I have felt increasingly alarmed about the vitriol, distrust, and destructive miscommunication that are tearing people apart everywhere I turn. In nations, in religious communities, in businesses, in nonprofit organizations, in friendships, even in families. On social media, name-calling, misinformation, and propaganda squeeze out intelligent, honest, and respectful conversation. In the mass media, accusations of fake news fly in all directions, leaving people wondering who to trust. In the world of religion, shallow, mean-spirited, or profit-hungry preachers draw huge crowds week after week, and they consistently appeal not to the better angels of human nature, but to our unspoken fears and unacknowledged prejudices. In the world of politics, uninformed, dishonest, and manipulative candidates keep winning elections, telling people not what they need to hear, but what they want to hear. Because of our polarization and paralysis, major problems are going unresolved, which intensifies frustration on all sides and leaves, literally, billions of us vulnerable to populist demagogues. The social fabric seems to be stretching so tight that it might rip apart. That scares me. What's going on? I keep asking myself. And then the editors of the meditation write, philosopher George Lakoff challenges the mistaken idea that arose during the Enlightenment that it is possible to see issues clearly based entirely on reason. And Lakoff writes, Enlightenment reason says everybody reasons the same way. Enlightenment reason says that all you need to do is get the facts and everybody will reason to the right conclusion since everybody has the same reason. No, if they have different worldviews, they'll reason to different conclusions. Enlightenment reason does not recognize different worldviews. Enlightenment reason doesn't admit framing. It doesn't admit metaphorical thought. It doesn't admit the way people really work. And then the editors write, McLaren describes how bias results when our worldviews become solidified. McLaren writes, here's a simple truth I began to see as I observed the decline in reasonableness, monitored the rise in dysfunctional and even dangerous discourse, and reviewed the academic literature. People can't see what they can't see. We all, yes, even me, and more shockingly, even you, have a whole set of assumptions and limitations, prejudices and preferences, likes, dislikes, and triggers, fears and conflicts of interest, blind spots and obsessions that keep us from seeing what we could and would see if we didn't have them. We are almost always unconscious of these internal obstacles to seeing and understanding, which makes it even harder for us to address them. We are, you might say, blind to what blinds us. The name for these unconscious internal obstacles is bias. Bias makes us resist and reject messages we should accept and accept messages we should resist and reject. In short, we can't see what we can't see because our biases get in the way. Well, there are a lot of thoughts that went through my head as I was reading this. One is this is something when I was a practicing minister in the Christian tradition, that I would often try to get across in my sermons from reading Christian texts, trying to get people to see things in a different way, and primarily to get them to see how they are seeing. Because until we know how we are seeing, we can't really see what it is that we're missing. And honestly, this is the nature of any kind of therapy, talk therapy that you might go through, is the therapist, I think, often works on helping you to see how it is you're seeing yourself in the world, and helping you to see in a different way, and to find coping mechanisms to deal with that internal bias you may have toward yourself or towards others. And it's a difficult task, because I often had said in a lot of my sermons, we don't know what we don't know. And that's so true, because what we know flavors what we take in, and keeps us from seeing or understanding what we don't know. But I often in my sermons finish that by saying, but once we do know, we can't unknow it. So finally being able to break through and see things in a different way really changes our way of thinking. And that was something I learned in seminary. I mean, seminary for me, in my situation, was not a place where it was teaching me what the text meant, or what to believe, or what the traditions are that I should uphold, but rather taught me how to think and see things in a different way. And it was very stressful in the beginning, because I was tearing down my biases in understanding my then faith tradition, and seeing what I didn't see, and then beginning to see things in a different way. It's much easier just to have everything black and white, but it's not truthful and it's not honest. We really need to be able to dig down and be able to see in a different way, and wrestle with the uncomfortableness of it. I also like the quote from George Lakoff. And he talks about reason and enlightenment. Reason says everybody reasons the same way. And I've heard it said, for example, that Democrats assume everyone is reasonable, and or reasons the same way that they do. And they don't. And so no good conversation can happen unless people are open to truly listening to the other, and then considering what they may have been misunderstanding, or what may have been blinding them to seeing things in a different way. And that takes work, and that's hard. And I think most people just simply don't want to do that. And so then they can, as McLaren says, they can't see what they can't see. And what gets in the way is their bias. I really think, as an example, another idea of that is people's lack of empathy. If you can't see how someone else sees, you can't have empathy for their situation. Or I should say, a lack of empathy prevents you from seeing the way they might see the world, experiencing things the way they experience things. I mean, a simple example is I was born European whiteness, and I will never know what it's like to not be white, and not have. I don't think I've ever really experienced prejudice. I mean, a little bit of it when I lived in Germany and didn't speak German very well. There was an assumption, I think, by some people that I was not well educated simply because I couldn't speak the language, and yet I had a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, and yet I felt some prejudice there. So that helped me to see what I couldn't see when I come across someone who struggles with speaking English. It doesn't mean that they're not educated or intelligent. It's just not their primary language, and that helped me to see in a different way and become more empathetic. Anyway, those are simple ideas, but I really think we all need to work on understanding how it is we see the world, unpack the biases that are preventing us from seeing in a different way, and seeing in a way that other people may see the world, and understand that just because we haven't experienced something doesn't negate someone else's experience. Anyway, lots of things, like I said, going through my mind as I was reading this. I hope this gives you something to think about today, and hope to talk to you again soon.